For thousands of migrants each year, the journey to the United States is not just a quest for a better life, it is a desperate gamble with death. Driven by poverty, violence, and persecution, they embark on an unforgiving trek across some of the most dangerous terrains on Earth. They walk for days through blistering deserts where the sun is merciless and the nights are freezing. They wade into the treacherous waters of the Rio Grande, where swift currents pull them under. They pay their life savings or take on crushing debts to ruthless human smugglers, only to be abandoned in desolate landscapes where no one will hear their cries for help. The U.S. Mexico border has now become one of the deadliest land migration routes in the world. The International Organization for Migration has reported record numbers of migrant deaths and disappearances, with over 686 confirmed fatalities in 2022 alone. These are only the cases that were officially recorded. Countless more bodies remain undiscovered in the vast and unforgiving wilderness. The Darian Gap, El Paso, the Rio Grande, the Sonoran and Chihuahuan deserts, La Bestia, and of course, the infamous border wall are among some of the most dangerous border crossings that have become migrant graveyards, where dreams of a new life in America end in tragedy. El Paso. The U.S. Mexico border stretches for more than 2,000 miles. But few areas are as notorious or as deadly as the region surrounding El Paso, Texas. Located directly across from Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, this crossing has become one of the most dangerous points of entry for migrants attempting to enter the United States. While some try to cross legally through ports of entry, many others, driven by desperation, risk their lives in perilous conditions, facing threats from smugglers, cartels, and the unforgiving desert terrain.
The smugglers, they don't care. They just don't care. They're getting paid anyway. So whether the migrant makes it or he doesn't, they're gonna get paid.
El Paso's location makes it a hotspot for migration. The Rio Grande River separates Texas from Mexico, but in many areas, the border is defined by towering steel fences and stretches of barren desert. The landscape itself poses a major risk. Many migrants die from dehydration, heat exhaustion, or hypothermia, depending on the season. In summer, temperatures in the Chihuahuan Desert often exceed 110 degrees Fahrenheit or about 43 degrees Celsius, turning the crossing into an endurance test that many do not survive. In winter, freezing temperatures pose a different but equally lethal threat. Migrants attempting to evade border patrol often travel through rugged mountainous areas, where cliffs, sharp rocks, and treacherous paths lead to deadly falls and injuries.
This is a very rocky terrain with high cliffs. We have seen multiple injuries from migrants themselves when they're crossing these mountains.
And making it a desirable place to cross, but it doesn't make it any less dangerous.
Exactly. Also, transnational criminal organizations, they try to do whatever it takes for them to get away with it, try to get away with it. That's the reality. Always willing to endanger those migrants. They have paid a huge amount of money for them to be crossed illegally. And at the end of the day, they're only placing them in danger.
One of the greatest dangers in El Paso isn't the environment, it's the criminal organizations that control human smuggling. Cartels and smuggling networks have turned illegal border crossings into a multi-billion-dollar business, extorting, exploiting, and abandoning those seeking a better life. Smugglers, known as coyotes, charge migrants anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 per person to transport them across the border. Many migrants go into massive debt, believing they will be able to repay it once they reach the U.S. However, if they fail to cross, the debt remains, and in many cases, their families back home are threatened if payments aren't made. Worse, smugglers often lie to their clients, leading them into extremely dangerous situations. Many migrants are abandoned mid-journey, left without food, water, or guidance in the desert. Others fall victim to kidnapping, extortion, or even murder at the hands of cartel operatives who see human trafficking as just another revenue stream.
It doesn't matter if they don't get the fee, if they cross the border, they get the fee regardless.
Exactly.
And human life doesn't matter to them.
I'm talking about a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
How much does the average smuggler earn?
We have heard ranges from the $18,000 to $6,000 per person.
In some cases, migrants are forced into drug smuggling, carrying illicit substances for the cartels in exchange for passage. If they refuse, they risk execution or being left behind to die. The deadly Darian Gap. In the depths of the dense, unforgiving jungle, the sound of gunfire erupts, panic spreads like wildfire, Migrants scatter, running blindly into the unknown, their hopes of reaching the U.S. momentarily overshadowed by a more immediate fear: survival. In this lawless stretch of wilderness between Colombia and Panama, known as the Darian Gap, death is nearly impossible to avoid.
This place is like hell on earth, really.
For those daring to cross, this 60-mile stretch of roadless rainforest is a living nightmare. It's a place where the elements are merciless, where bodies lie forgotten in the undergrowth, and where armed gangs lurk in the shadows preying on the weak. Yet, despite the dangers, a record-breaking 400,000 people will attempt this journey this year alone, more than 6 times the number from the year before.
The conditions are incredibly harsh. We just saw a woman that nearly broke her ankle in the river.
For many migrants, the journey begins in Necoclí, Colombia, a coastal town where thousands gather each day, waiting for the chance to cross. They come from Venezuela, Ecuador, Haiti, and increasingly from as far away as China and Afghanistan. Some have already been traveling for months. They are exhausted and desperate, but the memories of the horrific pasts they are trying to leave behind give them the strength to continue on.
Vine de Venezuela, padre, ¿usted sabe por qué? Por la hambruna. Si se desayuna no se almuerza y si se almuerza no se cena. Te soy sincera, yo
No, está bien, mujer, mujer, y no eres la única.
Y he hecho cantidad
Y no eres la única, pero tú crees que eres una heroína.
No, yo no soy
exponiendo a tus hijos por el tapón de... No.
Yo no me voy, yo mira.
Money dictates who moves forward. Migrants must pay up to $300 per person for a wristband, a so-called promise that local guides will lead them through the jungle. It's an expensive and deadly lottery. For those who can't pay, the journey ends before it even begins. If you do manage to make it to the next part of this journey, you'll face even more unimaginable horrors. The Darian Gap is no ordinary forest. It is an untamed wilderness where heat and humidity drain the life out of even the strongest travelers. Those who step into this rainforest do so knowing that not everyone will make it out.
¿Cómo está el camino?
We've made it, but the group just a few hours behind us didn't. They reported losing dozens of people washed away in the currents.
This must be one of the most difficult migrating routes in the whole of the world. And to think that these people have 3,000 miles in front of them before they get to America.
From the moment they enter, the dangers begin. The first test is the rivers, flooded by sudden downpours, their currents strong enough to sweep away entire families. Many migrants have been lost in the water and their bodies never recovered. Then comes the mud, thick, clinging, and relentless. It is nearly impossible to get through. The humid air turns every breath into a struggle. Migrants trudge for days and some collapse, and they are unable to continue. Others, delirious from dehydration, start hallucinating. Many are traveling with children, carrying them in their arms or strapped to their backs, pushing through fatigue and hunger because stopping is not an option. The jungle itself is dangerous, but the people lurking within it are even worse. Criminal gangs and armed groups control sections of the route. Migrants speak in hushed tones of robberies, kidnappings, and sexual violence. Women travel in groups for protection, but even that is not always enough. Despite the risk, some women believe that being would be a less horrific fate than what they might face if they stayed behind.
I'm coming from a war-torn zone and my life is in danger every minute. Every minute I fear the threat of death. My chances are better of surviving here and making it. Even if I might not die from... I know it's bad, it's dangerous, yeah, but it's better than death. Yeah, it's better than dying. Better than dying, so I prefer this risk.
After days of suffering, the migrants reach the border with Panama, but their ordeal is far from over. There is no celebration, no moment of relief. Instead, new dangers await. They must now navigate another lawless region, where Panamanian border patrols are few and armed criminals are many. Some don't make it past this point. Others are forced to wait and hope for a miracle.
By this stage of the journey, most are sick, and all are hungry.
Mami, no te quedes. Vamos.
Mire que por ahí sonó bien temprano unos gorilas. Uy, de repente un león. Una verga que sonó así bien feo.
Even those who survive the jungle are left injured and exhausted. Some are too sick to continue. Others are physically unable to go on and must be left behind. After around 6 days, the survivors will emerge from the jungle. The lucky ones pay $40 for a boat ride to a UN refugee camp. where, at least for a moment, they can rest. But the road ahead is still long. There are thousands of miles between them and the United States. Many will never make it. Border policies are tightening, and despite their sacrifices, most will be turned away, and yet they press on. Because in the end, the alternative, staying in a country where violence, poverty, or persecution awaits, is even worse. They keep moving, fueled by hope, risking everything for a future that remains uncertain. The Sonoran and Chihuahuan deserts, spanning Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and northern Mexico, are some of the deadliest routes for migrants crossing into the U.S. The harsh climate, lack of water, and remote terrain make survival extremely difficult. During the scorching summer months, temperatures in the Sonoran Desert can soar to 118 degrees Fahrenheit or 48 degrees Celsius, while the Chihuahuan Desert, though slightly cooler, still has many of the same deadly conditions.
It's really flat and there's not much signs of any other humans or civilization, so to get lost in this area, there's not a lot of places to go for help.
Migrants walking under the relentless sun suffer from heat stroke, dehydration, and organ failure, often collapsing before they reach safety. At night, the situation reverses and temperatures can plummet below freezing, especially in the Chihuahuan Desert, where the elevation is higher. Many migrants, unprepared for the drastic shifts, succumb to hypothermia before dawn. Water is almost non-existent in these barren regions. Migrants, often misled by smugglers, believe they can complete the journey quickly, only to find themselves stranded without food or water. Dehydration sets in within hours, leading to confusion, dizziness, and, in severe cases, death. Those who fall behind or collapse are often left behind to die, their bodies discovered months or even years later, scattered across the desert floor. It's so bad that many migrants would rather be arrested than try to survive even one more day.
Talk about the significance of these helicopters. Who controls that plane?
Those are CBP helicopters, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. They are out here looking for people. They fly really all up and down this valley and through these mountains and in different areas. And on the one hand, they can come across people, who want to get rescued. They want to get apprehended. People might set like a signal fire or something, or be desperately trying to signal because they've run out of water and they want to be at that point. They've come to the end and they are doing everything they can to get themselves rescued.
The isolation of these deserts makes rescue operations nearly impossible. Many migrants attempt to cross in areas that are miles away from the nearest town, making it difficult for U.S. Border Patrol or humanitarian aid groups to locate those in distress. Even when help is available, migrants often fear being detained and deported, leading them to avoid seeking assistance until it is too late. Adding to the dangers, criminal organizations and smugglers have turned the border into a high-risk zone for extortion, kidnapping, and murder. Migrants who cannot afford the increasing fees charged by smugglers are sometimes forced into modern-day slavery, working to pay off their debts. Others are robbed, or even killed by the same people they trusted to guide them to safety. The cartel presence in regions like Sonora, Chihuahua, and Coahuila makes these crossings even more perilous, as migrants become easy prey in lawless territories. Despite the well-documented dangers, migrants continue to take this route because tightened border security has forced them into more remote and hazardous paths. Border walls and increased patrols have sealed off safer urban crossings, pushing migrants into vast stretches of desert where survival is far from guaranteed. Many rely on smugglers, who downplay the risks, assuring desperate travelers that the journey will be easy. By the time migrants realize the truth, they are already deep in the desert, with no way to turn back.
The loss of human life is immense, and the number of people in the U.S. and in other places who have disappeared family members and don't have any closure of knowing what happened to them is also massive.
Since 1998, thousands of bodies have been recovered in these deserts, but the actual death toll is likely much higher, as many remains are never found. In 2022 alone, nearly half of all migrant deaths along the U.S. Mexico border occurred in the Sonoran and Chihuahuan deserts. The sheer scale of the tragedy has led humanitarian groups to set up water stations and search and rescue missions, but the crisis continues, claiming more lives each year. The Rio Grande. The Rio Grande River, stretching over 1,900 miles, forms a natural border between Mexico and the United States. While it may seem like a manageable crossing, its waters are among the most dangerous obstacles for migrants seeking to enter the U.S. each year. The river has claimed hundreds of lives, many of them children, families, and individuals desperate for a better future.
Near Eagle Pass, Texas, hundreds of people continue to cross the Rio Grande, trying to slip under wire fences, overwhelming city services. But not everybody makes it. 2 people, including a 3-year-old boy, have already in the past 2 days. Still in U.S Mexico, we found more are risking those final steps north, like this group from Venezuela using tree limbs as a bridge to get to the other side.
Sometimes they fall in, and it's been difficult really to watch when they have to handle children, babies, and try to keep them safe, literally handing them over to somebody who plucks them over to the other side.
The Rio Grande has become known as one of the most deadly migration routes. A combination of treacherous waters, unpredictable currents, border policies, and exploitation by smugglers has turned this river into a graveyard for those attempting to cross. Many migrants, especially those unfamiliar with the terrain, underestimate the Rio Grande's hazards. From the shore, the river may appear calm and passable, but beneath the surface, it hides dangerous currents, steep drop-offs and debris, and hidden obstacles that trap and injure migrants. The number of migrants in the Rio Grande has skyrocketed in recent years. In 2022 alone, at least 853 migrants died along the U.S. Mexico border, with many perishing in the river. However, the true number is likely much higher, as bodies are often never recovered, carried downstream into remote areas. Some of the most heartbreaking cases involve families attempting to cross together. Parents carrying their children often lose their grip in the strong current, leading to tragic separations. Stories of infants, toddlers, and young children being swept away are disturbingly common. In 2019, an image of a father and his 2-year-old daughter drowned in the Rio Grande shocked the world. Their arms were still wrapped around each other, a devastating symbol of the risks migrants take and the brutal reality of the border. La Bestia. Next on the list is not a specific location, but a form of transportation that many migrants use. For thousands of people journeying toward the United States, La Bestia, also known as the Beast, is both a lifeline and a death trap. This infamous freight train system, which runs through Mexico, has become one of the most dangerous migration routes in the world. Every year, thousands of desperate people, mainly from Central America, climb aboard its speeding metal carriages in an attempt to reach the U.S. border. But the journey on La Bestia is a gamble with death. Many fall, are maimed, or killed, while others become victims of gang violence, kidnapping, and extortion. For those who survive, the experience leaves them with physical scars, psychological trauma, and lifelong fear.
We're just outside Ciudad Juarez, and this is the last train stop for this freight train that's eventually going to head into the city. And you can see already dozens of migrants in several of these cars. On top of them, all abouts. They're asking us if we have water, if we have food.
La Bestia is not one train but a network of freight trains that runs from southern Mexico to the U.S. border. Unlike passenger trains, these are cargo trains designed to transport goods, not people. Migrants climb on top of the cars, clinging to the metal roofs and sides for days at a time as the train speeds north. A U.S. reporter spoke to a man who was using La Bestia to get to the United States. He had no food and very little water left.
It's very dangerous for women too. And they said food is just really scarce right now.
No, ya no tenemos agüita, sí me queda un poquito.
Omar spent 4 days on board already. Food? He's run out. He showed us the little water he has left and the documents he clings to, keeping secured in plastic.
One of the greatest dangers of La Bestia is the constant risk of falling. Many migrants lose their grip, fall asleep, or get pushed off by overcrowding. The results are gruesome and could include losing arms or legs, falling and being crushed by the train itself, or falling and not dying instantly, but instead being left behind in the scorching heat to slowly bleed out. Even if a migrant doesn't fall off La Bestia, they still face another deadly enemy, Mexico's criminal organizations. The train is controlled by cartels and gangs who see migrants as easy targets. Along the route, criminals board the train or wait at checkpoints to extort, kidnap, and even kill passengers. Despite these dangers, La Bestia remains one of the fastest and cheapest ways for migrants to travel through Mexico, but the price is often their lives. The U.S. border wall. The U.S. Mexico border is one of the most fortified international boundaries in the world, stretching over 1,900 miles from California to Texas. While the border wall was built to deter illegal crossings, it has ironically become one of the most dangerous and deadly barriers for migrants. Instead of stopping migration, it has forced desperate individuals to take even greater risks, like scaling towering walls, enduring treacherous terrain, and suffering life-threatening injuries in the process. From lethal falls to dehydration in isolated regions, the border wall has become a trap, one that pushes migrants toward perilous and often fatal outcomes. One of the greatest dangers of the border wall is its sheer height. Over the years, the U.S. has significantly increased the wall's elevation, making it harder to climb, but also deadlier to fall from.
A man is dead after falling from the border wall.
It happened shortly before 5 this morning in Otay Mesa. Police say the man climbed the wall on the Mexico side and then fell as he was crossing into the U.S.
The border wall now reaches up to 30 feet in some areas, far higher than the previous 10 to 15-foot fences. Many migrants attempt to climb the wall using makeshift ladders or ropes, but often slip, lose their grip, or misjudge their descent. A fall from 30 feet can cause broken bones, skull fractures, spinal injuries, and even death. A 2022 study found that severe injuries from border wall falls quadrupled after the wall was raised. Many of these injuries require lifelong medical treatment, which most migrants cannot afford. The U.S. Mexico border has become one of the most dangerous places for migrants, turning their journey into a life or death struggle. Desperate to escape violence, poverty, and danger, they face deadly deserts, strong rivers, ruthless smugglers, and high border walls that make crossing even more risky. Instead of stopping migration, these barriers have only made it more dangerous and deadly. Still, people keep coming because they feel they have no other choice. Staying in their home countries often means living in fear or extreme hardship. Until real solutions are found, more lives will be lost, and the border will continue to be a place where the lives of people clinging to hope come to tragic ends. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below.